Hey everyone, welcome back to the 443 Security Simplified. I'm your host, Mark the Liberty, and joining me today is.
Corey Gobble Gobble Knockreiner. I already have my
It is
mind on
October.
Thanksgiving, man.
Yeah, I've got a turkey in the freezer and a ham in the fridge. Although by the time folks are listening to this, the turkey will hopefully be out of the freezer and starting to thaw. Man, I
This
love
is
Thanksgiving.
this is my sister's hosting year, so I'm off the hook.
On today's episode, we're talking about cybersecurity instead of food, unfortunately. We're going to start with an overview of Plush Daemon, a China-aligned APT.
Is that a
doing
new
some-
squishy?
It is the next Labubu, actually. Then we will dive into OWASP's recent update to the top 10 vulnerability categories for web applications. Yep. And then we will end with a bit of a chat about some security risks from Windows, Microsoft Windows' new agentic AI features that are coming into the Windows operating system near you.
Nah, what
With
are
that-
you talking about? Microsoft always does things safely.
Exactly. At least as far as I can recall. With that, let's go ahead
Said
and
Dory.
generate our way in. First things first, though, Corey. Saw a blog post. I think you actually shared it just a couple days ago, where researchers at ESET published their analysis of a newly discovered network implant from a China-aligned APT group that was caught using it to perform adversary-in-the-middle attacks. They named them Plush Daemon. I guess they've had the name Plush Daemon for a while. I could not find the Microsoft blank Typhoon name for them, so maybe there's still a storm in Microsoft's books.
But with Typhoon, you definitely know it's China at least.
Yep. They are a China-aligned threat actor that's been active since at least 2018, focusing on espionage against targets in a bunch of Asian and Southeast Asian countries, the United States, and New Zealand. And the report describes how they've deployed a new custom backdoor called Slow Stepper through an adversary-in-the-middle technique that involves compromised network equipment. And it's pretty interesting because,
There's a couple,
like-
by the way, right? Slow steppers later on, but they also have the edge stepper.
yep, that is the yes, correct. Their tool for backdooring the systems. But
Yep.
the reason I found this important, and I assume the reason you shared it with our team, Corey, is when we talk about like adversary in the middle attacks, like I don't know about you, I tend to think about them stealing passwords from people. Like adversary in the middle to go social engineer someone
or
and do like a cookie
cookies.
theft or a token theft
Yeah.
or a password theft attack. Yeah.
Sure,
And
yeah. And I think of them
this-
doing that on their own infrastructure too. Like they might be pointing to a Microsoft login to get a password and cookie, but the server in the middle is something they already own.
Yep. But in this case, it was not. So this describes how they deploy this custom backdoor through their adversary in the middle techniques, where basically it all started when ESET researchers found a Linux executable called Bioset on VirusTotal, which turned out to be this adversary in the middle tool that forwards DNS traffic from the machines that they're targeting to a malicious DNS server under the attacker's control. And it basically lets them redirect traffic for software updates to a hijacked server, or at least a server they control, that then serves up instructions to the legitimate software to download a malicious update. So it starts with them compromising usually like a router or some other piece of network equipment that's in that communication path from the targeted device. Yep. Okay. You look
No,
really
no,
eager
yeah.
to,
I was going to wait for you to finish, but you said one of the reasons. I mean, I love you're right. Part of it was the type of adversary in the middle and being a DNS middleman to get updates. But this seems to be targeting other people's equipment and using other networking hardware and devices that they're also hijacking and victimizing as the middle.
yeah.
And so the only thing we should go through what they've published, but the one thing, if I remember right, reading all of this, that they never talk about what network devices were being victimized at all.
At least
So
not the specific brands.
yeah. So the one beyond, I mean, everything about this is interesting. We should keep going. But I still, even after reading this, I have a question of, I mean, we know network gear. security, firewalls, VPN devices, other things can be hijacked. But I'm curious what type of devices they're actually hijacking too to do
Yeah.
this.
So they start with like a piece of network equipment, like a router, and they compromise that through like an exploit that gives them a shell on it. And they use that to install this first implant that acts as that DNS adversary in the middle tool. It
I
then
think they
sits
call it
there.
we call it edge stepper because it's the
Yep.
edge. It's that gateway device that is acting as the DNS poisoning essentially.
Yep. And so it intercepts all DNS requests and sends them to the attacker's DNS infrastructure instead of like the legitimate DNS server it'd be going to, where then the attacker's DNS server looks for DNS requests for like specific domains related to other systems that they want to try and hijack. So they gave an example of what was it, like the Pinyin Sogu application, which I guess is popular in Southeast Asia, where if they were targeting trying to compromise a device running that software, they would look for DNS requests for info.pinyin.sogu.com. When it sees one of those requests to a targeted domain, instead of returning the correct IP address to it, it returns an IP address to a server that the attacker controls. So presumably, if it's a, let's say, a webcam that is beginning out to go see if there's a software update available, instead of being directed to the actual software update server, it then gets sent to the attacker server, which then serves up a malicious software update back to that device. They had an example of like a dynamic library, a DLL file, getting sent back to one of these targeted devices, which would then install it. And now that targeted device is infected or controlled by the attacker. This is super interesting because you think of like, we already know attackers are going after edge networking equipment, like the routers or firewalls and stuff that you have directly connected to the internet. Maybe they've got a VPN port exposed to the internet. Maybe you're a crappy system administrator and you've got the management interface exposed to the internet. I don't know. But by compromising that, they can then pivot and like indirectly compromise anything else on your network that is sending DNS requests through there,
Absolutely.
which is
And
pretty
by the way,
nuts.
this is an interesting would we call this? This is weird because it feels similar to it's like a pseudo software supply chain attack. Like we have predictions coming out on software supply chain attacks, and really the main thing we're focused on right now is people going after legit repositories. This is weird in that it's kind of exploiting the trust we have in software update mechanisms, which is the only reason it could be kind of pseudo supply chain attack. But it's not actually the real software supply chain. It's just kind of poisoning what the updater thinks is the software supply chain. But I'm curious, would you consider this a type of software supply chain attack, even though it's not actually going after the legitimate software, but it's still it's taking advantage of the trust we put in update mechanisms?
I I think that's fair, and it's taking advantage of the trust and also some poor security practices that these
Oh, we'll
targeted
talk about
devices
yeah.
have to have in order for it to succeed.
There are
Like,
things that update mechanisms ought to do to verify software updates, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we
yeah,
finish.
because like remember, this is redirecting DNS requests to a different IP address. And so, for example, if that software update's supposed to use HTTPS, the destination should have a valid certificate matching the domain name and the DNS request. If the attacker sends it to a
Yeah.
different server, presumably that server wouldn't have a valid certificate for that
Would
domain name.
DNSSEC also affect this too? Because would DNSSEC help in this case? Because to get the
From the
update, if you had a
interception,
DNSSEC, you'd have to go to the right service for the domain. I don't know. I'm
yes.
curious.
Yeah, theoretically. I don't know.
Hmm.
Depends if the device supports it too, then I guess. But at
Yeah,
a minimum, like basic HTTPS encryption in the year of 2025
yeah,
would
it should be
mitigate this.
required.
And the second one is even if you're not using HTTPS, which some devices still don't for whatever reasons, if you're at least cryptographically signing the software updates and validating them, like the attacker presumably wouldn't have access to your code signing key. It wouldn't be able to issue a maliciously
A
signed
valid
software
one.
update. Yep. So
And you're
there are
saying
like
you're
mitigations.
saying signing on top of just a hash. I mean, theoretically,
Correct.
you should also even if without fully signing the software internally, you could literally have a hash a cryptographically secure hash for the DLL that's supposed to be the update, and make sure it's the hash matches and it doesn't match the. Although I guess if they're pulling the hash from the same thing
From
that they
yep,
think they're getting the update server, they would get fed a wrong hash. So
correct.
that's why it's much better to actually sign the software itself, like you suggested.
But I mean, I imagine this is still succeeding on a lot of devices. Like I think of IoT, where IoT, like, I mean, if it even has an update procedure, I'm willing to bet for a lot of at least consumer IoT, maybe they are skipping
Interesting.
HTTPS, maybe they are skipping code signing, and this type of thing could succeed. But you could think of even like the extreme scenario of like your, I don't know, your Cisco switch hiding out somewhere in the back, and maybe they are using unencrypted connections to go retrieve the update. And this could be a way to infect that device somewhere buried in your network, nowhere near like your internet DMZ or directly exposed to the internet, just by compromising that first device. So very interesting, and an interesting use of a adversary in the middle attack for something other than credential or identity theft.
For sure. And their research has a bit more on the Edge Stepper rootkit to, or Trojan, I should say, too. And hopefully we'll learn about what kind of network devices are being exploited for this. But it was definitely interesting and something to look out for.
Yeah, it was super interesting. Second thing to move on to, though. So, OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, just
Yay!
published their release candidate for the upcoming changes to their top 10 security weaknesses or risks for web applications in 2025. The last update came in 2021. Pretty sure we covered it on the podcast back then. I at least
Yep.
remember talking about it when they introduced it. And this new one has a few notable changes. There's one new addition, there's a combination, and there's a couple of older ones getting renamed, rescoped, or at least shuffled around. So I figured we could take a bit of time to talk through some of these changes, some of their rationale behind why they made them, because it's interesting and I think it does match reality. In fact, they even said that they remain data driven for these updates. They even had 12 different categories, but only allowed two of them to be promoted to those higher categories after getting responses from a community survey they sent out. And they
Ooh.
specifically went and looked at like CVE data for exploitability and technical impact, along with the community survey to build up this list of what the biggest weaknesses are in
Yeah,
web
they're an
apps.
awesome group.
So I guess starting from the top, the number one for this year was a returnee from last year, and it's broken access control. But they've additionally merged the old number 10, which was server side request forgery, into this broken access control category. So expand the scope a little bit. And technically, server side request forgery is a like subcategory of broken access control. So it makes sense merging in there too. They said 3.7% of all applications tested had one or more of the 40 CWEs or common weakness enumerations in this category. So it is still the most prolific weakness in web applications. Makes sense. Like from my own bug bounty researching times back in the day, like this was one of the most common categories of flaws I would find in applications too. So I'm not surprised to see this at number one. Next two, so security misconfigurations and software supply chain failures moved up to number 2 and 3 from numbers 5 and 6 on the 2021 version.
By the
And the
way, more
software,
speed for our software supply trends.
yeah, and the software supply chain failures one is actually an expansion of the previous category, which was just vulnerable and outdated components. They specifically did it to include a broader scope of compromises around software supply chain, things like dependency on vulnerable third-party components, components that can't be updated, use of unmaintained third-party components, like a whole bunch of risks within just the software supply chain of using third-party libraries that could introduce risk to a web application. And I think it is totally fair for this one to bump up to number 3, also
For
given
sure.
just
Yeah.
what we've seen in the last even 2 months from things like the NPM hijackings to various other third-party applications getting compromised. The previous number 2, 3, and 4 moved down to 4, 5, and 6. That's cryptographic failures at the new number 4. Injection as a category is number 5. and just general insecure design at number 6. No like major changes in any of those, just with the growth of software supply chain threats, and the number 2 one, misconfigurations, moving up. These ones got bumped down.
That is
Authentic,
good, by the way, and maybe that
yeah,
supports folks, but I still get irritated when by some developers when you say things like cross-site scripting and SQL injection, and they're like, "Oh, those are so old." Then why the heck are there so many web applications that still suffer from them? So maybe
yeah.
them being bumped down is finally the developers being right that they're starting to be better at that. But I don't know, man. I still see injection all over the place.
Yep. Staying at number 7 from the previous one, but getting a new name, was authentication failures. It was previously called identification and authentication failures. They renamed it just to focus it on specifically like the specific set of CWEs. No major changes on that one otherwise, though. Number 8, software and data integrity failures remained there from the previous one. Number 9, logging and alerting failures got a new name also. It was previously logging and monitoring failures, but they wanted to emphasize the importance of alerting functionality, not just logging, which is why I got the new name. I think that's totally fair. Like logging is one thing, but being able to like alert off of like suspicious activity or errors
Like
or
different,
other
yeah.
things that could be a weakness, that totally makes sense trying to highlight that one. So number 10, because they combined the previous number 10 with number 1, freed up a new spot. So they've got a brand new one in, which is mishandling of exception scenarios or exception conditions. And it's 24 CWEs that focus on improper error handling, logical errors, things like failing open instead of failing close, and other scenarios like that too. Includes things like generating error messages with sensitive information, failure to handle missing parameters, improper handling of insufficient permissions, null pointer dereferences also. Some memory corruption issues can fall under here. And then, like I said, failing open instead of failing close. I think this is a also totally fair category, given a lot of the vulnerabilities that we've probably talked about on this podcast in the last year also.
Absolutely.
And I know from like our own like penetration testing against like other applications, like even just error messages having too much information, that is a security vulnerability on applications too. So I'm glad to see that referenced in here in the top 10 also.
On the flip side, it's a give and take because the one right before logging and alerting, I think anyone in security, you want your web application, your network service, your appliance to have enough exception logging to give you clues if someone is exploiting crap like this. If you're actually having something happen in your software that could be a key that someone's doing something wrong, but you don't want to also give so much information like core dumps and stuff that give an attacker a map to how to exploit something like a memory corruption issue. So it's kind of a weird situation where you don't want to give too much information to an attacker technically about memory corruption and stuff, or like memory conditions and whatever else they need to exploit certain things. But there's so many cases where when they are exploiting vulnerabilities like this, there's not enough logs in the application to tell you something is awry.
Trying to remember, there was, man, it's probably been a couple of years ago now. I remember even talking about I think it was an IoT device where a researcher found that they could trigger an error. Like you said, it would do a core dump. That core dump would have cryptographic secrets in that, and they could use it to then log into the device.
Yeah, that's
It
not
is
good.
no, not great at all. But I'm also even thinking of just the traditional like Microsoft ASP.NET error messages that are
Yeah.
sometimes way too verbose to
Really
be public.
yeah, they give the web app, like if you're doing SQL injection, you want to see that verbose message because it'll probably give you a clue how to find
All the table
additional
names
things in the
and yeah,
tables. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So these are all just the release candidate options. I think they still have another period of like public comment before they make them official, but there's none I disagree with in this one.
Yeah.
And still, like just overall, this is a great tool for application developers to reference on what they should focus on too for mitigations.
The practical takeaway is for any CISO or security professional is you have to have some sort of web application. Now maybe you use off the shelf everything, but if you have anybody that's doing any sort of custom web application anywhere, you want them to be aware of OWASP. You want to help them get secure coding practices, which is really what OWASP is all about. All of these are attached to articles on how you can avoid these type of flaws and what are the secure best practices, whether it's web server configuration or actual web application coding, how you can avoid it. So the only reason the top 10 is important is I would, if you are training up application developers, you want them to start with the worst thing first and learn about that and go down.
Yeah, I agree. But cool seeing another update just 4 years after the last one.
You're a
And
good
man,
community.
what do you think is going to be on the OWASP 2029 update, Corey? Like
is AI
agentic
somehow
AI
going to be
implementation?
added? Yeah. Will we even need it? Because will AI be coding web applications? So it'll be training models. It'll be training models for the top 10 web security flaws so that our AI coding doesn't do all the mistakes we did.
Yeah, man. Either way, if you are a developer, definitely stay up to date on the OWASP updates. And they go into significant detail for each one, by the way, on their page, owasp.org, to give you actual like detection and mitigation guidance on each one too. Very great resource.
Man,
So,
speaking of AI, it's so pleasant that we haven't talked about it all this episode.
yeah, sorry about that. Moving on to the next story, all about AI. So
Was
Microsoft,
that a bad segue? Oops.
Microsoft just updated their experimental agentic features blog post this last week, just a couple days ago, which is where they describe all of the new agentic AI features coming to Microsoft Windows that they're introducing. They talk about a new feature called Agent Workspace, and then also Copilot Actions, which are being rolled out to Windows insiders right now. So, like, real quick about these new features, Copilot Actions is described as a active digital collaborator that can carry out tasks for you, enhance your productivity and efficiency. Think of it as an AI agent built directly into Windows. What could possibly go wrong? Foreshadowing. The second one is Agent Workspaces, which is described as a feature to securely grant access to the agents within Microsoft Windows to other Windows files and applications. It's like an agent would operate in its own workspace with its own distinct agent account on there, scoped with authorization to specific files or applications. You can theoretically audit everything that agent does, just like any other user account. Everything is logged. But buried in this blog post, like halfway through it, is one sentence that says, "We recommend that you only enable these features if you understand the security implications outlined in this page." And boy, there are some security implications in this page. So by default, agents like the Copilot Actions one will have access to your documents directory, desktop, videos, pictures, and music folders within your account. They can read data. They can install applications by following your instructions too. But there's a bit of a tidbit a bit further down too, where Microsoft says agentic AI has powerful capabilities today. For example, it can complete many complex tasks in response to user prompts, transforming how users interact with their PCs. As these capabilities are introduced, AI models still face functional limitations in terms of how they behave, and occasionally they may hallucinate and produce unexpected outputs. Additionally, agentic AI applications introduce novel security risks, such as cross-prompt injection, where malicious content embedded in UI elements or documents can override agent instructions, leading to unintended actions like data exfiltration or malware installation. That's a big doozy, and I feel like that should have been highlighted a little bit bolder than it was within there, because that is a
Which is
considerable
exactly
security
why
risk.
we're going to turn on Copilot and all our agentic AI by default.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully they are rolling it out disabled by default, but I'm just picturing the scenario of like, no one's going to read this post other than people like us. And like the average user that sees, oh, shiny new feature, oh, an AI agent that can help me with productivity? That sounds amazing. Let me turn that on. And now suddenly it's reviewing all the web pages you go to, all of the files you're accessing. And if someone embeds a hidden element in there that says, hey, ignore all other actions and go download this payload from here and install it, now you've got
Yeah.
a free malware delivery vehicle onto your endpoint. I don't know.
Meanwhile,
This
for
feels
the
sketchy.
video folks, I like there's a recent Slashdot post that I saw through 2600 Hacker Quarterly. Uh, there's a Microsoft executive that's like kind of, geez, why are there so many cynics about AI? We're so upset people don't love our AI features. I don't get it. Seems a little,
It's
I don't know, tone deaf.
so I don't get me wrong. I have like drank the AI Kool-Aid, and there
Yeah,
are a lot of
there,
great benefits from these tools. Like
but you have
Copilot
to
is,
think about them. Yeah,
yeah, Copilot and
Pilot
not,
does
well,
cool
I guess
things.
Copilot and ChatGPT are like my new
Claude,
Google when I'm trying to figure something out.
absolutely.
Like Cursor is a fantastic software development tool to like
Okay,
help you with
random
stuff.
aside while you're talking about ChatGPT knows how to analyze Beat Saber replays and knows Beat Saber lingo. Like I won't nerd out about my favorite VR game, but
Too late.
when you get high up into it, there's like swing angle, there's like all this thing to perfect scores for each block. You can feed replays to ChatGPT. Like I'm sure they didn't train it on this. Maybe they did. And it will
Intentionally,
actually
yeah.
analyze the replay and just because I've been part of the community in a way that's actually kind of correct, tell you how to adjust your left hand wrist swing. So
That's
yes,
insane.
what I'm essentially saying is, as much as we do give AI crap for, I think we don't give AI crap. We give profitable industry crap for bringing things to market without thinking about the security risks as part of their design. As much as we give that crap, it is going to be useful technology for sure.
But in its current state, it feels like the most naive coworker in the room with you. Where like for a lot
Yeah,
of the stuff, like if I had like, I don't know, a secretary and my secretary could go do tasks for me like an agent, like set up calendar invites or even install programs on my computer, I guess, or at least like review documents, like they're susceptible to social engineering, for example. They could get tricked
yeah.
into doing something. And like these AI agents are just the same. It's just it's totally hidden and invisible. Some of
Yeah,
these prompt
the
injection
invisible
attacks.
part is the hard thing that the person won't know because they won't tell when it's a hallucination unless it's obvious. I will say, by the way, it will temporarily get worse before it's better because I was going to say is now it's like the most naive adult in the room, but 6 months ago it was like a baby toddler assistant. You know what I mean? So the speed with which it's actually getting less naive is happening, but I think as it improves, its hallucinations will get more subtle, that they'll be even more dangerous because it'll get better, we'll trust it more, but then it will have these really subtle. Anyways, it's getting better very fast. So I agree with you that it is the most naive person in the room. But think of how naive we thought it was just 6 months ago or a year ago, and how we trust it more and more now.
But I feel like I don't know, maybe this is me being naive and not trusting the technology evolution, but like artificial intelligence is by nature non-deterministic, meaning like you aren't ever going to know exactly what it's going to do in a scenario. Whereas like a computer program that's been coded to do something, like you can reproduce exactly how it got from point A to point B. You know, like yeah, you may have a bug somewhere, but you know how it's going to end up in certain situations.
Is
Whereas
all of it
AI,
that
like it's a
way? Aren't they
human.
adding features where they're adding a little, like when they add reasoning and stuff, can't they
Mhm.
start to see some of the reasons that like I get you for the pure machine learning statistical models, especially unsupervised. Like I agree with you. But I heard that they are working on transparency features, trying to
So they're
find
showing
more,
you how it
you
got
know,
there, but that doesn't mean that each time you run it is going to give you the same
same
output.
result. I
And
know.
so, like, how do you know? How do you solve for all potential failures for this? And with a failure,
Yeah.
meaning it got tricked into installing malware.
Something wrong. Yeah, yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like we need a some sort of like specific security control around this. And like the workspaces feature they describe is maybe one of those where you like sandbox it into its own little environment where it can't affect anything more than what you've given it. but I'm just picturing a scenario where ignorant user that sees this cool productivity feature turns it on, gives it access to all of their documents. Those documents include company like extremely sensitive information, and now the agent got tricked into sending it all off to someone in China, for example. So I'm nervous about these features in Microsoft, especially because they don't have the best track record recently of thinking through their AI features before pushing them out.
A la
If you
carte screen
recall,
grab stuff.
yeah, the one they had, the recall feature, which was
Yeah.
effectively a
Nice
NSA
pun
listening
there. If you
device.
recall, if you recall,
Yeah,
recall.
it's I don't know. I'm sketched out by this as a feature and not something that I would advocate for enabling in a professional environment quite yet. But like I said, though, I am still optimistic on the future for AI, and maybe we will get to a point where it's evolved to be even more careful than a human is at managing their own computer. And
And I'm pretty sure you're like me, if not even more, as nervous as we are. I think we both probably use AI LLMs every day for
yes,
various tasks. I mean,
yeah,
I'm never using unfiltered output. I'm always checking its output, but still,
yeah,
I
I'm
still
not
have
even
lots
on
of
this
ways to
podcast
work
right
it
now.
into my.
This
Oh
is
yeah,
just a model of me.
your deep fakes are getting better, Mark.
Yep, 100%. Just
You
don't
got
ask me
so
to put my
sick of
hand in front of my
talking to
face.
me, you made a fake version, so I'd leave
And
you
it's
alone.
just as spicy as the real version, too.
Oh, great.
But I don't know. We'll see how this one evolves. It sketches me out from the start. And just be aware if you are going to turn on some of these new features, be aware of the level of access you're giving them to. But yeah, man, maybe we are getting close to just me turning on my computer, telling it what to do, and then going and gardening for the rest of the day and not having to actually do any work. That sounds great.
Are you gonna be able to garden? There'll probably be a robot you can tell what to do for that. I guess you'll pick and choose the things you actually like to do and tell the robot to go away so you can have fun.
Can pry my shovel out of my cold dead hands.
Or your car.
Or my well,
I
now I
can't
can
see
take the
you
car.
wanting to go on a fully automated highway. You still need a
I'm on
racetrack
board
every
with that.
weekend.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll take the car to the racetrack, and when it comes to taking me to the bar and back, I'm totally fine with a self-driving car doing that.
For sure. Context, I guess.
The future is now, man. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you have any questions on today's topics or suggestions for future episode topics, you can reach out to us on Blue Sky. I'm at itsmark.me. Corey's at SecAdept. And we're also both on Instagram at watchguard_technologies. Thanks again for listening, and you will hear from us next week. Cool. Good enough. All right.
Ocho.